Hello, everyone, and welcome to People of Interest. People of Interest is a show based on stories from people like you and me. I am your host, Miguel Guanipa, and today I have a very special guest. She's a very funny girl, and she's very charismatic. I can agree with that. Her name is Amy Sheeran. Amy,
Hi.
thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today? Your hands very warm,
Good.
but it's because of the
Sorry. It's
coffee, right?
yeah.
So how are you today?
Good.
Good?
Today was good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You did anything special today? Anything memorable?
I took my dog for a nice walk in the woods.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the dog is something that does bring a smile to your face, correct?
Oh, of course.
And
She's
why is that?
um
Tell me
s-
about it.
she has been in my life for almost 13 years and she has been the only constant thing in my life. She has seen me at my worst, my
Hmm.
best, and it's just that unconditional love that's so amazing that pets give.
A true friend.
Yes.
So 13 years old, that's like
She's like,
60 for me and you or something like that?
yep,
Oh.
yeah,
I
yep.
used to know a joke about that, but I can't remember it now.
About
Like
dog
a dog
years.
going into a bar. It
Oh,
says, I'm like 3 years old. That means I'm 21. I can, something like that. Something to that effect.
oh,
He can drink. But anyway, just kidding. So one thing that we were talking about before we started, uh, I had told you about a documentary that I had seen about a guy that lost his memory,
mm-hmm.
but he had lost his ability to memorize things for more than 7 seconds or so.
Okay.
But you told me a little bit about yourself, that you have a period of your life that you don't remember concretely.
Right.
Could you tell me,
Yeah.
explain that a little bit to me?
Um, I um suffered a little trauma when I was 18. My mom passed away, and just living through that time, you kind of just your brain just does things that your body can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just lost most memory of my childhood. You can look at it as like she died and she took all those memories.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if it's because I just don't want to remember them
Hmm.
or whatnot. But then later on in life, I suffered a pretty severe concussion, blocking out probably a good portion of my 20s
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So it wouldn't, yeah, accounting for, you know, before I turned 30 would be a little hard.
Hmm. So when you said, do you feel, or do you think? It sounds a little bit, but I'll ask the question because that's what I'm wondering. Do you wonder that it was partly a kind of like a voluntary thing on your part that you decided these memories have to go, or was it the shock itself that just,
I think it was the shock itself.
yeah.
When I found out, I still remember, like, your body, when I lost all control of emotional, physical, all of that went out the door. I became so emotionally unable to handle myself.
This is when you were 18, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, like, traumatic shock to me created such this, like, weirdness about me that I couldn't close a cabinet door.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you interviewed my aunt, she'd be like, Amy's teen years were so hard to rein her in.
Mm.
You knew that I was in the kitchen because a cupboard would be open, or she'd battle with me about leaving lights on or cleaning my room. It was just like this complete disconnect, which people could call that like a disregard for other people's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But in my life at that moment, I couldn't even get through my own feelings, let alone could even imagine somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I just wouldn't do things, and it wouldn't because I didn't do them to hurt somebody or just to be, that person, but
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't. Like, the simple things like that would just be, hard to just do.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do them. Now I
Yeah.
freak out on other people, and I'm like, why'd you leave the light on?
So you were half functioning, kind
Right.
of.
Yeah, it's almost like
Hmm.
there were things about me that just stopped. And
Hmm.
then I just gradually relearned them
Hmm.
on just how to be conscious
Hmm.
of my world. And that's helped a lot. Now, like in my most recent years, did I start teaching myself about mindfulness and being conscious in the moment and not, really caring so much about the judgment of others and just trying to live in the moment that I exist in.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to assimilate all that. So you were. So this was after your mother died. Now, I would be inclined to think, okay, so your mother was a big part of your life, or was she somebody?
Yeah, I grew up with a single mother.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a stepdad for a period of time in my life. He was a really good man. I remember that of him. Still to this day, I believe he's a very good man. He's a religious man who he's found God, and that's helped him.
Mm-hmm.
And just growing up with her as basically her life was my life support,
Mm-hmm.
and losing her was, almost felt catastrophic to me.
So your aunt was taking kind of like looking over you after that, or?
Yeah, my youngest aunt really took me in,
Hmm.
took my life as she was going to help me become a woman, per se, because my mom was, very in and out of my life as a late teenager. And, in your late teens as a girl or even a boy, your life is changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pretty scary world trying to get through it. I'm really glad that I had her.
Hmm. So one of the things you mentioned, your mother had a struggle with drugs.
Mm.
Okay, and that affected both your lives, I'm assuming.
Oh, both of our lives, the lives of my family.
Mm-hmm.
It put a big strain on the family, very emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned physically, obviously, because you want to put that person out.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way. You just put them out of your life, and they can't really hurt you with their doings.
Mm-hmm.
But the drug abuse, really struck a chord with me. Alcohol abuse as well. It's funny that, when I turned 21, you would think she wouldn't drink, but that seemed to be like the best choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really drank before I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
That I made a conscious decision. But then when I turned 21, it was like the get out of jail free card.
Get out
It
of jail
felt,
free card?
yeah, in
Oh,
Monopoly.
the 21 was the get out
I
of
was
jail.
like, woohoo! Like,
Yeah.
I'm allowed to do this. And, I kind of went off the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, here's the thing. When I first met you, I know you briefly. I don't know you that long. But when I first met you, I'm thinking, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at the way you operate, and I'm thinking, this is a very confident girl.
Oh, I'm so far from that too.
Well, that's kind of like the image I got. She's very funny, seems very confident, very articulate. Now you don't feel that way about yourself. You're saying
No,
no,
I'm very much completely the opposite.
yeah, very shy,
I don't know about
introverted.
shy. I feel like I'm becoming introverted.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, like I actually I never would enjoy time by myself. Like that was the most scariest thing
Hmm.
was to not have something to do on a Friday night. Now I'm like, I got to go hang out with this person. Like I'd very much
I gotta
rather
go,
just sit at home.
Miguel's show.
Well, no, it's Wednesday night.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it just became like I would be afraid to be alone.
Hmm.
And now it's like I'm rejoicing my time that I get to spend with myself and my thoughts.
So when did you? Okay, so that's a whole history before you began to maybe build yourself up into more of a person that you know for yourself. This is more who I want to be. The
Right.
person from the past is not who I want to be, but you don't know that when you're there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you feel that you began to make that move forward from that state? And
Um
how did it happen? What prompted it?
so I had a very long-term relationship with
Hmm.
a person and we ended that relationship and as adults we lived in a home together. So that breakup and that like complete like push out of like the nest per se of I went from living with my family to living with this person and now I'm out on my own navigating life as a single person and that was that was one of the big pushes of you're going to be independent and you are not going to depend on other people.
Hmm.
Oddly enough, that took almost 8 years to become like in fruition of now I am comfortable being single, I'm comfortable being independent
Hmm.
and living, you know, somewhat on my own. I have a roommate, but just doing life with Amy and Pumpkin in mind, and that's it.
Pumpkin is the dog.
Yes,
Oh,
that's my
okay.
dog.
Okay. Hmm. So you're pretty independent now, and you're like moving forward. You're kind of like
Yeah.
your own person. Are there like I remember what you said when we were talking earlier. You said you said to yourself, "I'm not going to live in this
Yeah, this
sadness
sea of
anymore. The sea of
sadness. Yeah.
sadness."
Like, you know, my mom passing, and like, I put so much of my life into that. Like, anything that happened to my life that was negative, or people would say that I was acting this way, I'd always say, like, that's my excuse. Like, my mom died when I was 18, and
Hmm.
I don't have a dad either. And I use that as an excuse instead of like
Hmm.
pushing me to be a better person and live a more fulfilling life than my mom did. Like, don't try to walk in her shoes, be something better that
Hmm.
you both would want for yourself.
So you didn't want to use that as an excuse anymore. What do you think?
Right. And I don't, you know, some people are going to have to use that as an excuse for a
Yeah.
little while until they feel comfortable, really looking in
Hmm.
and just, really looking
But
hard
you have to
at.
deal with it at some
Right.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to deal with the reality that that happened. And
Right.
so,
And I wasn't strong enough to deal with the nitty gritty stuff and
hmm
just to deal with it and just like let it go. And until, you let it go, can you move on from that? So I always felt held back
Mm-hmm.
by that sea of sadness that I created for myself.
Mm.
So then once you're done, playing in the waters and you get out and deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
you that's when better things in my life started to come to me.
How has that helped you to begin to become that person?
Well, being like a stronger person, have dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
You learn things in life, unfortunately, the hard way, and using that now has created, a stronger person. I can handle more on my plate,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I think I can handle more on my plate.
Yeah.
It's not always true, but I feel like life is a little bit easier now that I deal with the nitty gritty stuff as it is instead of pushing it off.
Mm. Do you feel ever, or do you ever feel misunderstood by other people?
Oh, yeah. I feel that way,
Yeah.
but then those people are like, no, we know exactly who you are. Like, I feel very misunderstood by my own family,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess they know me better than I know myself, which makes me feel like I'm living in a slight denial of who I am. Maybe I just don't see other qualities in myself.
What
Like
do you
some
mean?
days you go to work and you're like,
Yeah.
I suck at this job. On the days that are really hard and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. I've never said I hate my job,
Yeah.
my new job, as a behavioral assistant, but like some days are just so tough. You
Yeah.
think that you're failing at it
Mm-hmm.
because it was a bad day. I remember used to having bad days at other jobs, and I'm like, oh, hate my job. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was that their fault.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden now, when I have a bad day, I think it's like my fault. Like
Mm.
how much that's changed.
Okay. So it's like kind of like responsibility, taking
Yeah,
responsibility and stuff like that.
there you go. I started taking responsibility.
Do
That's
you feel?
probably a big thing that happened in my 30s. I started to learn how to take responsibility.
Yeah.
That was a big thing in my 20s, just not taking responsibility for things.
Some people it takes longer than the 30s to start
Oh,
thinking like
well, good. Then I'm glad I'm in front of someone.
well, because it's isn't it easier sometimes not to take responsibility? Like,
Right. You're like, oh, whoopsie daisy. But
oh, well, I have a question. I'm wondering here. Speaking of that documentary that I was telling you about, one of the things that I remember from that documentary is that this man who lost his memory, he could only remember things for 7 seconds. When his wife started suspecting that something was wrong, they went to the brain facility unit, whatever, in the hospital, and she said um, that when she went in there and she started finding out what was actually going on, and she saw the gates in the hospital kind of shut behind her. She said her quote was, "After I saw those gates shutting down, I knew that life as I knew it was over from that point on." So those gates kind of signify to her that life as I know it is over now. So do you have you had a moment like that? I'm sure you have, but do you remember a time when you actually said those words, in a sense, the same words to yourself, life as I know it, it's over at this point,
um
or my life
like
as I know it.
because my life is changing,
Yeah.
that life that I've been living
Mm-hmm.
now is gone. I think my life has never been drastic enough as a change
Hmm.
like that. I mean, when my mom died, obviously that I felt like at that moment, yes, my life changed drastically.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just so young, so naive, so, dependent on those around me
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, I let that change of my life, go negatively when it would be really hard at that age to turn something like that into a positive. But um, other than, you know, I used to have two dogs.
Mm.
I had a dog, Casey. Loved life. That girl was never sad, even when she like ruptured a disc in her back. You know, she was a little calmer then, but she was just so full of life, so energetic. She just love, like loved life.
Mm.
She got run over right in front
Mm.
of me. And at that point, you know, um, we, after that day, we went for a walk in the woods with Pumpkin,
Mm-hmm.
the living dog. And, you're only holding one leash. And right then, you're like, I
Mm.
can't take life for granted anymore.
Wow. So that's pets are a very important part in your life.
Yes, they are.
And
Sometimes more than people.
yeah, you look at when you look at them and you see I mean, their character and how, I mean, open they are in a way, or how trusting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you look at it when you look at your life and this new approach to life. Do you feel that this approach will make you more open, or more trusting of people, or will it have the potential also of making you more wary of people and relationships?
I think it pushed me out to just, not take, so much. Like, I would take a picture and post it to Instagram
Mm-hmm.
only to find, who actually liked me or who cared about what I was
A lot
doing.
of people do that.
Yes. But until then, when Casey passed away, I didn't go to social media for people's, like, I needed people's attention or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And, after Casey passed, it was more or less like, I want to do things in my life that create a significance, that create a memory, that create positiveness in my life, and that could create a positiveness in other people's lives.
Hmm.
Like, my aunt started doing Girls on the Run in Worcester County. She's the council director for that. It's a nonprofit that teaches girls goal oriented things while running.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great program. I mean, if that was around when I was like 18, maybe that would have taught me how to be more positive in such a darkness of a time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, teaching little girls those things, they're third through fifth grade and goes up to eighth grade. But the values that we teach these girls and the independent and that little gusto of fight,
Mm-hmm.
it taught me so much by teaching them. So that was a great moment in my life too. I did that for a few years, working.
The Girls on the Run thing.
Yeah, an
I
after
heard of
school
them.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good program. I
Hmm.
would recommend it for any child, well, any girl, age grades 3 through 5. It's a great program. Even if you don't see your kid like falling in the cracks of life, it's just great because another girl in that program
Mm-hmm.
might need your kid to pull her right out of her shell.
Now, if you look at your life, usually a lot of the guests that I talk to are like 50, 60 and over sometimes. So when I ask them
Oh.
about their past life and you know, but I mean, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but do you have a person in your life that you look back in your life and you say that person was very important in my life? If that person wasn't there, I wouldn't.
Oh yeah,
You,
my aunt Karen.
yeah, why is
Oh
that?
yeah. Well, she being only 12 years older than me, when I
Hmm.
was 18, she was, just she was young too,
Hmm.
and she was, engaged and getting married and doing those things in her life. Like she didn't need an 18-year-old
Mm.
in her plans, but she gobbled me up and took me under her wing and
Wow.
made sure I went to college and I did the things that I was supposed to, even though I wasn't, I wouldn't have put myself in those positions. She really always just kept, she pushed
Mm-hmm.
when I needed it. It's still to this day. She'll push when I
Mm.
need it. But lately I've been pushing myself, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And that's. I'm just trying to. I'm really. One looks. If we look back a little bit, don't want to talk about things that are too painful, but um, what you work with autistic children, right?
Yes. Yep.
When did you start doing that? How long have you been doing that?
I have no idea when it came to my mind that I
Mm.
wanted to do this. Well, first I wanted to do like sports entertainment event management. I went to college for that at Johnson&
Mm.
Wales. And I wanted to work for the Red Sox. My grandfather was a huge Red Sox fan, never missed a game on television.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. So I went to Johnson& Wales. I picked that
Sports entertainment and what again, manager?
event management.
Event management.
So
Okay.
most of the girls in there, they were looking to be wedding planners. I
Okay.
wanted to work for the Red Sox. Like
All
I
right.
thought it was gonna happen. Well, obviously it didn't. But
Yeah.
I did work for the Patriots. I was in the quality control management group and that was fun. That was, a big woohoo moment for me. That
Yeah.
was fun. That was really cool. And then I changed my mind and I was like, I want to be a gym teacher. Like, that's the best job. Like, wearing athletic clothes to work every day and, like,
Yeah.
working out with little kids and playing. And because I felt like fitness in everyone's life was like a great thing. And at that time, the president was really pushing gym as a
Mm-hmm.
big thing. Music was falling out of our schools, but gym was huge.
Yeah.
And gym was a big part of my life. Like, that was my favorite subject. That was my outlet in school. And, you know, I loved it. I did not become a gym teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, that job is like, one in a million.
The gym or the
Yeah, to
sports?
be a physical education teacher is just
Really?
like, oh, yeah, well, there's only one per
Yeah, there
school.
is. Yeah, you're right.
You got like three per district. It's
Yeah.
really hard. So then I kind of went on with my life of being a service advisor at dealerships and doing that kind of stuff and trying to really figure out what I wanted to do because I kind of wanted to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd have to go all the way back to school. Here I am, approaching my 30s, and that just wasn't a feasible idea. I was still paying off college education, before. Like
Mm-hmm.
now paying two, that would be ridiculous. And then all of a sudden here I am researching and I could become a paraprofessional by taking the parapro test. I went, I took it, aced it, got my first job, based on that. I was working in a special education department. I've never, it was a very, like, that year was so eye opening to me. I've never worked with special education children. I've really never spent more than maybe 5 minutes with a kid that needed that special attention. So it was very eye opening to me. And it taught me so much patience that still to this day, I have no idea where it came from. My patience. And it's great. I really love my job now. I work with 2 3-year-olds who are autistic. They have speech needs and other needs. And, we joke around with my friends. Like, they call them, my boyfriends. Those 2 kids, I spend more time with them than I do anyone else, any other human. And I put a lot of who I am into their education every day, creating an environment for them to learn in. In those kids, they need so much general education. Every second is a learning point for them. So you almost have to be so on top of your game with them. I go home and I have to take a nap every day. I'm so exhausted. And that's why I don't have children. Like, I don't know how these people do it. They have children and they're in the educational system, and then they go home and they have to do it almost like all over again with their kids. Like,
But you have a lot of patience now, so you could have children now.
no, I don't know if I have 24/7 patience. I kind of like the idea of getting paid to be
Yeah.
a mom. Because you care for and you nurture and you educate these children, and I
Yeah.
get paid for it.
Where do you think you get your sense of humor?
Oh, I don't know. My grandfather he could have been funny. I
Yeah?
think he was funny, but he just told the same jokes too many times. People stopped laughing. But I think my mom was a class clown.
Yeah?
Yeah, she was, you know, I just recently gone to Florida and I visited my mom's best friend. She grew up with her. She has her own kids. I grew up with some of her children. And just going down there was a night where, we just sat, in Florida, poolside. It was in December.
What
It
does
was
that
like
mean?
the best because it was so warm out.
Oh, okay.
And we were just chatting and having such a great conversation. And, one of the things that I love to hear is like all the awesome memories that people had with my mom. And I do very much appreciate those times. Because I look very much, I guess, like my mom.
Physically?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Personality, you think maybe? There was
I think
some similarity?
personality wise, I would hope people would say that we would have the same personality. I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I have my grandmother's personality.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think every day I'm like turning into my grandmother.
Yeah?
Which isn't, she's a very strong, wise woman.
Yeah?
But sometimes, I mean, she can be funny. She can be a little brass sometimes, which I feel like there are sometimes underlining of my personality is becoming brass. Like, no filter sometimes.
People have told you that, or you
Sometimes I
observing
feel
that?
like I have no filter. Like, I say too much. Or, you don't
Huh.
say the right thing at the right moment.
That's your grandmother?
Yes. Well, she just thinks something and she just says it.
Yeah.
She's lived long enough that she doesn't care. But,
So now I wanted to go back to your mother a little bit now,
okay.
and I was hesitant to talk about your mother and asking you about your mother because at first I felt this something bad there. But then as I talk to you a little more, it's not your mother that was bad, but your mother was not a bad person.
Oh no, she wasn't.
Yeah.
She was a really good person.
Yeah.
It was just her choices to not deal with life.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't deal with the nitty-gritty. She covered it up with and masked those feelings with drugs.
Okay.
So her inability to cope with life itself may have led to her beginning to do drugs. Unfortunately, my mom suffered from migraines. And back in the 90s, early 2000s, when methamphetamines came out,
Yeah.
they started prescribing that to migraine patients. And unfortunately, my mom got caught up in the opioid.
The opioid. Oh.
And that really, was her demise. That was her. That's what pulled the plug pretty much, was getting into that. And then, obviously taking whatever was on the same playing field wherever she could get it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was in pill form, maybe it was in other forms. But, there was some days where, you had to go and find her, pick her up. And, those are the times where, I wish I was older and I could have talked some sense into her. But really, when I look back and I'm just like, there were times where I was wise beyond my years. And I did tell her. I remember writing her a letter about how she wasn't going to be around. And everything in that letter came true. And now I have to deal with, not being able to share those things with a mom, which thankful I have my aunt who kind of filled those shoes. She did a great job.
So it was tough when that started happening then, and then you had to.
Right.
You were in shock, and then you had to kind of like emerge from that, and you got a lot of help from your aunt. Now you also met Victoria, right? Was that later on, much later on?
Yes, much
Yeah?
later on.
Okay.
I met Victoria about when I was turning 30, so about 6 years ago. I was in, that was, I want to say I met Victoria around the time that, became a big change in my life of me becoming an independent person. She brought me into Lifesong after,
Lifesong the church. We want to say that so they know.
yes, Lifesong the church.
church, yeah.
And she brought me there with, the hopes of coffee, and I had
Oh,
my
she tricked
coffee.
you.
She did trick me with some coffee. And she opened her world up to me. And, she is one of the sweetest people I've known. And she opened up her home and her family and things like that. And, we have a good friendship today. She has brought me into her, I've come back into that life recently. I've become more serious about my life with Christ and, kind of moving in that direction of doing that. But I didn't want my life with Jesus Christ to be like a diet. And I didn't want me to one day be like, that's too much work for me. I don't want to do it anymore. So I, was very mindful about starting slow, not jumping in like I did last time. I mean, I probably tried head over feet last time, going every Sunday, signing up for 101 and, I'm glad that I found all those things out about me, but it was just so overwhelming and so fast for me that it was like I wasn't being genuine to myself. Like, you're just starting to get into this. I didn't own a Bible. I didn't know Jesus Christ that well. I knew him more as a Catholic instead of a Christian. But then again, that was in my childhood, which I don't really recall. And it was, it's been easier to deal with the nitty-gritty stuff when you have Jesus Christ. So that's been, helpful, having that and having somebody to talk to. It's like you can bounce off ideas off of him because there's only, you only hear yourself talk at the moment, and you're like, now I can hear myself actually think, which has been really good. Just like hearing what's going on up here, and it comes out, and then you can hear it, and I can process it better.
That's very interesting. I heard one time somebody who a method that they use. This is what it reminded me of. If they had some trauma in their lives with somebody or something, is that to take a chair and pretend that that person's sitting on the chair, and then talking to that person and letting them know all the things that they were dealing with because of that person or whatever. So it had to do with people who had people that had caused trauma in their lives for whatever reason, either voluntary or involuntary, but they were not around anymore, so they couldn't go to that person. And so that made me think about that.
I just scream at the ceiling. Just be like,
That helped them,
screaming
sure.
out, yeah,
Yeah.
when you're angry.
Now you're like you were telling me earlier that you also were a different person than you used to be a person that were more concerned with what other people thought. And
Yeah, I mean, I just like, I got sucked into that social media. Like, you have to post a picture and people are going to judge you, and their likes or their comments suggest how significant you are in your life. And my ex-boyfriend really, he never liked social media for its purpose of that, of posting a picture, posting about your life for other people to criticize, whether negative or positive, and living in the moment for yourself instead of taking a picture and trying to share that moment with other people. I mean, it's more or less just living for myself instead of other people, which has brought more happiness to my life. So that's good.
Did you are you a person that you think that you like more to, or what do you like more? Do you like what do you prefer? Do you prefer routine, or do you prefer the unexpected or being
I
surprised?
can't deal with the unexpected. Like, I'm not a control freak,
Mm-hmm.
but cannot do, I don't know what we're doing later. Like, I need to know what we're doing later.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I need to know what my day looks like
Yeah.
to feel prepared for it. I suffer from some anxiety. I'm getting a lot better. And just the mindfulness and being in the moment
Yeah.
has helped with anxiety. And, thinking inward instead of outward
Mm-hmm.
has helped. But sometimes you get wrapped up in the moment. Sometimes you got to feel those feels and move on. But
What you get wrapped up in the moment? What
yeah,
is that?
sometimes you get wrapped up in the moment. Like, sometimes you're going to care what somebody else thinks, and you have those moments in your life.
Oh, sometimes the anxiety
Right,
bothers
and your
you,
anxiety
you have to
takes
kind of like.
full control, but I know that it's not going to, I don't allow it to really affect my life like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about now you found you kind of like experiencing a little bit more of what life with God is, and that has helped you in some areas of your life, I suspect.
Yeah. It's, um, when I first actually started going back, there was a moment, well, she kind of still is a moment. I have certain family members that I have feelings about, very negative feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I bounce a lot of those feelings off of Jesus Christ,
Mm,
especially when, I'm praying in church to, I really like try to give him
yeah.
those feelings. And, um, I don't know if he said, just separate yourself, give some separation, which I caused a lot of, did a lot of separation. It hasn't helped.
Mm-hmm. Peace said I didn't hear that part.
Like, I feel like when I was going to church, he said to create separation,
Mm-hmm.
create
Oh, okay.
space for something. And what I felt is I created dead space. Like, she has no idea I have these feelings about her. So, how am I supposed to change it?
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been doing like a lot of inward thinking about why I feel this way and then just throwing it up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just hoping that one day he just speaks and says, you know, but
You're
it's
free.
mostly about just letting go. I just have to let go of it. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't, and that's one of the things that I struggle with is just not being able to let go. I just need to move on from it. But I don't know if I feel like there's a strong pull to not let go. Like there is something that I need to change.
Mm-hmm. Where is the place that you find that you are the most at peace? Or when is that? Or where is that?
Oddly, on the water.
On the water.
Yeah, like I'm really looking forward to like going kayak, like buying a kayak and just getting on the water.
Mm.
Hopefully, Pumpkin's not afraid.
Mm.
But like not having walls.
Mm.
Like you're out in the open, you feel the sunshine and the nature, and you're in God's environment that He created, and there's just no walls. That feels amazing.
Mm.
Pumpkin and I did a hike up to in New Hampshire and stayed the weekend, and we stayed at this little camp on the lake. It was like a shack, but you can't find great places to take your dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. We hiked all the way up the mountain and just
Mm.
like getting up there and just there's nothing. You're the highest thing besides the clouds, and that felt great.
Mm.
Like no boundaries, no walls to close you in. You can see so far. That stuff's good. That stuff's good medicine.
Do you feel that you are younger than you are sometimes at
Oh,
all?
I feel like I'm still 26. Like
Yeah.
I'm 36, but when other people start saying I look 36, maybe I'll start. But if I can still get away with looking
Well, they might
26,
start saying that when you're like 56 or something.
that's
And
fine.
then,
I'll be 36 when I'm 56. But I very much enjoy now that I'm 36, it doesn't bother me. But a small, petite, young looking woman before, you didn't get respect
mm-hmm.
because you looked like a child. You
Yeah.
were treated like a child.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you start acting like a child. But I've had, you know, supervisors and managers before treat me like a child because of what I look like. And I'm not a business suit kind of gal, so I also love wearing jeans and t-shirts to work. But, it's really hard to look 36. Because when I was 26 and I looked like at a 36-year-old, I was like, where do they shop? Talbot's? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's an old lady store. But, it's, I'm just as young as I feel. Some days I feel 90, but then I take a nap and I feel great.
Do you ever find it's kind of a maybe an odd kind of question, but I don't know if you'll be able to remember an occasion in which you felt two emotions that were somewhat contradictory to each other at the same time.
That's like, I feel that every day. Like anger and like immediately sadness.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when, I was going through, my grieving my mom's death,
Yeah.
like I could write like a list of 50 emotions that I probably felt every day. Most of them, you could describe as just I was angry.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of anger. And then, I've just recently, I like to do like a lot of research on anxiety and, all these documentaries that are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I like, if I find something fascinating on that, I'm going to do a little bit more research.
Yeah.
Like all this CBD stuff that's out right now. And, we don't have enough research on that to really just go to any store and pick up some CBD thing and just put it on our bodies. I find it crazy.
What's the CBD?
It's a cannabinoid, so it's out of the hemp plant. So our federal government has allowed us farmers to do hemp plants. They don't have THC in them.
Yeah.
But it's some cannabinoids can, produce health benefits. But it's how much do we need to create a health benefit? And there's no study of long-term effects and stuff like that. So I've done my, research and stuff like that, because when I was very anxiety ridden and depressed and stuff like that, the medical industry was just feeding drugs. And I felt I didn't want that stuff saturating my brain. And so I did everything else. Exercise, meditation, counseling, all that to get away from the medication part of it. I took them, but I didn't want to. I wanted to try to seek,
Are you comfortable
help.
right now?
I'm pretty comfortable all the time.
You are? Because I was wondering the anxiety situation. That's not something that, you're here, you're talking, you seem to, I hope, be enjoying yourself. So you're not like.
Oh, I'm sweating like crazy. You can't see it.
All right. So you're very funny. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes.
Okay.
Because I always give my.
I
guest
didn't
an opportunity.
watch the end of the video last time, so I have no
That's
idea
fine.
what this 2 minutes
Or
is.
you want to say if something that has touched you deeply that you want to share with whoever the random person may be who stumbles upon this that can help them. How will you tell them?
Perseverance.
Perseverance.
Yeah. It's not like I've had plenty of times in my life where, I could have just thrown my hands up and said, I'm done. But I've never felt that way. I've always felt like my life had like meaning of some kind.
Yeah.
And if there's someone that, their parents passed away and they're angry and stuff like that, your heart will be lighter. It just takes time.
Persevere.
Yeah. You got to keep, it's just one foot in front of the other and just keep moving.
Well, Amy, thank you very much. I
You're
hope I
welcome.
didn't, you know, waste that hour that I just stole from you. I hope you had a good time.
No, I
Really
had a great
appreciate
time.
you being here. And
Yeah.
thank you for joining me.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you again next time the next person comes in and shares their story.